The phone call came through on a line nobody had used in 3 years. The voice on the other end was one he knew. But it didn't sound like her, not even close. Diana never sounded like this, breathless, raw, terrified. "Boss, please." Her voice cracked like dry wood splitting. "Come home right now." She's erasing her. "If you don't come now, there won't be anything left of Sophia to save." Marcus Stone had built his entire empire on reading fear. He knew the difference between real panic and a performance. He knew the difference between actual danger and someone just trying to manipulate him. But this was something else entirely. This was the kind of fear that only comes from watching something sacred being destroyed right in front of your eyes. He was 40 blocks away, high-rise boardroom, expensive cigar smoke curling toward the ceiling. A meeting that would shift the balance of power across 3 different states. Men in $1,000 suits waiting for his word. He gave them nothing, no explanation, no dismissal. Just the sound of his chair scraping back and his footsteps echoing toward the elevator. The drive was 7 minutes. It felt like drowning. His leather gloves gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles went white. The city blurred past in streaks of light and shadow. His mind was running through every possible scenario. Intruders, accidents, rival gangs, anything that made sense. Nothing made sense. Marcus moved through the penthouse like a shadow returning to its source. The silence pressed against his ears, thick, wrong. His home had never been loud. Sophia's world existed in gestures and careful quiet. But this was different. This was the silence of something vital being slowly suffocated. The security panel by the door blinked red. His code failed. After 15 years of the same code, his own home had locked him out. He didn't stop to wonder why. His shoulder hit the reinforced door once. Twice, on the third hit, something in the electronic lock gave way with a metallic shriek that echoed through the marble floor. Diana stood 10 feet inside. One hand pressed flat against the wall, like the floor had tilted beneath her feet. Her uniform, always perfectly pressed, was wrinkled across one side like she'd been shoved against something. Or someone, her other hand was gripping her phone so tight her knuckles had gone pale. And when she looked up at him, Marcus saw something in her eyes he had never seen before. Not fear. Diana had never been afraid of him, which was part of why he'd kept her working here when everyone else lasted less than a week. "This was devastation. She's in there," Diana whispered. Her voice scraped raw like sandpaper. "I tried to stop her. I tried to." Her breath caught hard. "She locked the door. I heard Sophia trying to breathe and I couldn't get in." Marcus didn't wait for the rest. He moved past her down the hallway where family photos hung in expensive frames. Images of a life he had built with the same precision he used for everything else. Strategic, controlled, perfect, all of it a lie. The nursery door was closed but not locked. He could hear it now. The sound that had been eating at the edges of his mind since Diana's call. Fabric tearing, slow, methodical. And underneath it, the rapid, shallow breathing of a child in serious distress. His hand closed around the door handle. The metal was cold against his palm, and for just one moment, Marcus Stone, who had stared down corrupt politicians, rival crime bosses, and federal prosecutors without even blinking, hesitated. Because once he opened this door, once he actually saw what was happening inside, everything would change. The illusion of the family he had been trying to build would shatter completely. The alliance that had taken 2 years to negotiate would collapse. And he would finally have to face the truth he had been avoiding for 6 months, that he had brought a predator into his own home, dressed her in designer clothes, and called her his future wife. He opened the door. The nursery had been designed as a sanctuary. Soft gray walls, blackout curtains Sophia could control herself, a weighted blanket on the small bed, noise-canceling headphones on the nightstand. Every single element carefully chosen by the team of specialists he had hired to help his daughter navigate a world that felt too loud, too bright, too much for her sensitive nervous system. Now it looked like a crime scene. White silk covered the floor in shredded strips, some pieces no larger than his palm. The vintage wedding dress, the one his first wife had worn, the one he had saved for Sophia because it was the only thing that still carried her mother's scent, had been systematically destroyed. Victoria stood in the center of all that destruction, fabric scissors in her right hand, her designer dress somehow still immaculate despite the violence she had just committed. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless. She looked like she was posing for a magazine cover titled Elegant Destruction. And at her feet, pressed against the wall like a wounded animal, was Sophia. His daughter's small body was rigid with panic, her chest heaving with the kind of desperate breathing that comes right before someone passes out. Her hands, so small, so fragile, were clenched around the last piece of silk, a square of fabric no bigger than a handkerchief, the dress's bodice, the part that would have been over her mother's heart. Victoria's eyes tracked to him, and something that might have been relief crossed her face. Marcus, thank God. I've been trying to teach her, step away from her. His voice came out flat. Empty, the tone he used right before he ended someone's life. Victoria blinked. Her expression shifted to confusion. What? No, you don't understand. She was having a tantrum. She wouldn't let go of this old dress. And I was trying to show her that holding on to the past, step away. Something in his face must have finally registered because Victoria took a step back, the scissors still in her hand. You're being dramatic. I was helping her. She needs to move on. We all do. This obsession with her dead mother is unhealthy. That's when Sophia made a sound. Not a word. His daughter hadn't spoken in 3 years, but it was a whimper, high and broken, and it was directed at the doorway behind him. Marcus turned slightly, just enough to see Diana moving into the room. She wasn't looking at him or at Victoria. Her entire focus was on Sophia, and she was making herself smaller, threatening as she crossed the floor through the destroyed silk. It's okay, sweet girl, Diana murmured, her voice low and steady despite the tremor visible in her hands. I'm right here. You're safe now. Victoria's face twisted. She doesn't need you. She needs discipline. She needs to learn that throwing fits and clinging to ghosts won't. She moved toward Sophia, the scissors still raised. Diana moved faster. She put herself between Victoria and the child. And Marcus watched the transformation happen in real time. The quiet, unassuming woman who always kept her eyes down and her voice soft became something else entirely. Her spine straightened, her shoulders squared, and when she looked at Victoria, there was steel in her gaze that could cut glass. Touch her again, Diana said softly, and you'll regret it. Victoria laughed, actually laughed. You're threatening me. You're the help. You're nothing. She lunged. Not at Sophia this time, at the piece of silk still clutched in the child's hands. Diana's arm came up, blocking the movement, and the fabric scissors, those sharp professional, grayed blades, sliced through the sleeve of her uniform and into the flesh beneath. Blood welled immediately, dark against Diana's skin, dripping onto the white silk at their feet like some kind of painting that would haunt him forever. Diana didn't scream, didn't even gasp. She just wrapped her other arm around Sophia, shielding the child's entire body with her own. And held on. That's when Marcus moved. He crossed the room in 3 strides, his hand closing around Victoria's wrist with enough force to make bones grind together. The scissors clattered to the floor. He spun her around, walking her backward until her spine hit the wall. His forearm across her throat, applying just enough pressure to make breathing difficult. Are you out of your mind? His voice came out in a hiss. Victoria's eyes went wide, her hands coming up to claw at his arm. Marcus, please. I didn't mean. She got in the way. He wasn't listening. His gaze had shifted past her to the floor, where Sophia sat wrapped in Diana's arms. His daughter's small hands were pressed against Diana's bleeding arm, not in horror, but in some desperate attempt to stop the flow. And she was looking at Diana like she was the only solid thing in a collapsing world. Not at him, at Diana. The woman he had hired to clean his home had become the person his daughter trusted most in the world. And he hadn't even noticed, behind him, Diana's voice was soft but urgent. Boss, Sophia needs you to breathe. She's watching you. She needs to see you calm. The words cut through the red haze clouding his vision. He looked down at Victoria, at the woman he had planned to marry, and saw a stranger. Had she always been this? Or had he just been too focused on the strategic value of the alliance to notice the monster underneath the expensive clothes and perfect smile? He released her, stepped back, and Victoria collapsed against the wall, gasping. "You don't understand," she wheezed. "I was trying to help. That child is broken. She needs a get out." Victoria's head snapped up. "What? Get out of this room right now before I forget that there are consequences for killing you." For the first time, real fear crossed Victoria's face. She looked at him, then at Diana and Sophia huddled on the floor, then back at him. "You're choosing them over me. Over our agreement. Over, out," she went, stumbling over the shredded silk, her perfect composure finally cracking. The door slammed behind her, and the silence that followed felt like the aftermath of an explosion. Marcus turned slowly, his body moving through thick air, until he faced his daughter and the woman bleeding for her. Diana had pulled Sophia into her lap, one arm still wrapped protectively around the child despite the blood seeping through her uniform. Sophia had both hands pressed against the wound now, and her eyes, those dark expressive eyes that held everything she couldn't say, were streaming with silent tears. "Let me see." Marcus knelt beside them, reaching for Diana's arm. She pulled back slightly, an instinctive movement, then forced herself still. Her jaw was tight, her breathing controlled, but he could see the pain etched into the lines around her mouth. "It's not deep," she said quietly. "You're bleeding on my floor. Your floor has seen worse." The comment was so unexpected, so absurdly accurate, that Marcus almost smiled. "Almost how long?" he asked instead. Diana's eyes met his and understanding passed between them. 3 months, 2 weeks after I started." She began with small things. Comments about Sophia being too sensitive, too difficult. Then it escalated. "And you didn't tell me. I tried." Her voice was gentle but firm. "Twice. You were busy." And Victoria was always there with explanations that sounded reasonable. That made me sound paranoid. He had dismissed her. He remembered now, vaguely, Diana approaching him about Sophia seeming more withdrawn. He had assumed it was just adjustment to having a woman in the house again. He had been wrong. Sophia made another sound, this one directed at him, and when he looked at her, his daughter was holding out the piece of silk she had protected. Her mother's dress, her most precious possession. She was offering it to him like an apology, like she thought this was somehow her fault. Marcus's chest constricted like something inside it was collapsing. He took the silk carefully, his rough hands gentle around the delicate fabric, and then he did something he hadn't done since his wife died. He gathered his daughter into his arms and held on. Sophia was small against his chest, barely weighing anything at all, and Marcus realized with sick clarity that she had gotten smaller since Victoria moved in. Thinner, more fragile. He had told himself it was normal childhood fluctuations. But now, holding her properly for the first time in months, he could feel each rib through her shirt. What else had he missed? Diana was trying to stand, using the wall for support, her wounded arm cradled against her stomach. Blood had soaked through the pressure she had applied, dripping onto the silk, strewn floor in steady drops that sounded too loud in the quiet room. "Sit down." The automatic authority in his voice made her freeze mid-movement. "I need to clean this up before." "Sit down." She sat. More from shock than obedience, he thought. Diana had never responded to his commands the way his men did. With that instant, unquestioning compliance born of fear, she always paused, considered, then chose to follow through. Like she was humoring him, it should have irritated him. Instead, he had always found it oddly refreshing. Now, watching her try to maintain composure, while bleeding from a wound she had taken protecting his child, he found it something else entirely. Something that sat heavy and uncomfortable in his chest like shame. Sophia squirmed in his arms, not trying to escape. But to see Diana, her small hand reached out, and Marcus adjusted his hold so his daughter could maintain contact with the woman who had become her guardian without him even noticing. "The first aid kit is in the kitchen," Diana said quietly, "top cabinet on the left. I know where it is." He did. Though he had never used it, Diana had been the one to handle every scraped knee, every minor household injury. He had been too busy building empires and negotiating alliances, too busy to notice his daughter was being destroyed. He stood with Sophia still in his arms. She was clutching the piece of silk in one hand and Diana's uninjured hand in the other, creating a bridge between them. Stay here, both of you. It wasn't a request, but Diana nodded anyway. She had gone pale, he noticed. The blood loss wasn't severe enough to be life-threatening, but it was more than enough to cause serious problems if left untreated. The trip to the kitchen and back took less than 3 minutes, but by the time he returned, Victoria had reappeared in the doorway. She had composed herself, fixed her hair, reapplied her lipstick, like the last 15 minutes had been a minor inconvenience, rather than her revealing herself as a monster. "We need to talk," she said, her voice calm and reasonable, about what happened, about boundaries and discipline, and "get out of my sight." Marcus didn't look at her. He was too focused on Diana's arm. On the precise way the blood flow had slowed but not stopped. "You're being unreasonable. I was trying to help Sophia move past her trauma. Clinging to that dress is unhealthy. Any child specialist would tell you. Any child specialist would tell me that destroying her last connection to her dead mother while she watched is psychological torture." He set the first aid kit down, finally turning to face his partner. "Get out, now, before I have you removed." Victoria's mask slipped again, and underneath it was something cold and calculating. "You're really going to throw away everything we've built? The alliance between our families, the trade agreements, the connections, all for what? A damaged child and the maid." The silence that followed was absolute. Then Diana laughed. It was a soft sound, nearly inaudible, but it carried something that made Victoria stiffen. "You really don't understand, do you?" Diana's voice was steady despite her injury. "You thought you were building something, but you can't build on a foundation you're actively destroying. This man," she gestured toward Marcus, "might be cold, might be ruthless, might run an empire built on fear and violence, but his daughter is the one thing he would burn the whole world for. And you just forced him to choose." Victoria's perfect face twisted with contempt. "She can't even talk. She's weak. She's useless. I was doing him a favor, clearing the path for." Marcus moved so fast Victoria didn't have time to flinch. One moment he was kneeling beside Diana. The next, his hand was wrapped around Victoria's throat, backing her out of the nursery and into the hallway beyond. The door slammed shut behind them, but not before Sophia pressed her face into Diana's shoulder, her small body trembling. The hallway was lined with security cameras. "Good, let this be recorded. Let everyone see what came next. Do you think I built this empire on stupidity?" His voice was conversational, almost pleasant, which made it more terrifying. "Do you think I survived 2 decades in this business by missing obvious threats?" Victoria clawed at his wrist, her perfect nails scratching uselessly against his skin. "Marcus, please. I knew you were ambitious. I knew you wanted power. I even knew you saw Sophia as an obstacle." He leaned in closer, his breath ghosting across her ear. "What I needed to know was how far you'd go. What you would do when you thought no one was watching." Her eyes went wide. "What?" "The business trip to the coast. I never left the city. I've been watching, Victoria, waiting to see if you'd show me what you really were." He released her, letting her stumble back against the opposite wall. "Congratulations. You exceeded my worst expectations. You were testing me." The elevator chimed. 3 of his men stepped out, not the head of security. He noticed that with cold satisfaction. He would deal with that particular betrayal later. These were men he had known since childhood, men whose loyalty was absolute. Take her to the guest wing, lock her in, no phone, no computer, no contact with anyone. If she tries to leave, restrain her. I don't care how it looks. Marcus turned back toward the nursery, dismissing Victoria like she was already a ghost. "We'll deal with the fallout in the morning." "You can't do this." Victoria's voice rose to a shriek as hands closed around her arms. "My father will destroy you. The alliance. Your father is currently watching footage of you destroying my daughter's most precious possession while calling her garbage. He pulled out his phone, showing her the active video feed. I installed additional cameras in the nursery 3 weeks ago. Hidden ones, the kind Diana didn't even know about. He had been suspicious. Not enough to act, but enough to prepare, and now he had everything he needed. Victoria went limp in the guard's grip, her face draining of color as she realized the magnitude of her mistake. Marcus, please. We can fix this. I'll apologize to Sophia. You'll be lucky if an apology is all I require. He nodded to his men, and they dragged her toward the guest wing, her protests fading as they rounded the corner. Marcus stood alone in the hallway, surrounded by silk, covered floor and blood drops and the ruins of the perfect life he had tried to construct. His phone buzzed, messages flooding in from the elders, from Victoria's father, from a dozen other crime family heads who had been watching the feed he had deliberately broadcast to them. Good, let them see what happened to people who touched his daughter. When he opened the nursery door again, he found Diana had managed to apply a basic bandage to her arm using supplies from the kit one-handed. It was clumsy, already seeping through, but functional. Sophia sat beside her, the piece of silk now tucked into her pocket, her small hand resting on Diana's knee like she was afraid the woman would disappear. Let me do that properly. Marcus knelt again, carefully peeling away Diana's makeshift bandage. The wound was clean, surprisingly so given the violence of how it had happened. 4 inches long, not deep enough to require stitches, but close. It would scar. I'm sorry, Diana said quietly. He paused, antiseptic gauze in hand. For what? For not being stronger, for not stopping her sooner, for letting it get this far. You took a blade meant for my daughter. He resumed cleaning the wound, his touch as gentle as he could manage with hands more accustomed to violence than healing. You have nothing to apologize for. I should have made you listen, should have found a way to make you see. I should have been looking. The words came out harsher than he intended. This is my failure, not yours. Sophia made a soft sound, and both adults looked at her. She was staring at Marcus with those expressive eyes, and slowly, deliberately, she shook her head. Not your fault, her gesture said. Not anyone's fault but the monster who did this. His daughter, who hadn't communicated with him in meaningful ways for months, was trying to absolve him of guilt. The weight of that was almost unbearable. She's been protecting me, Diana said softly, reading his expression. These past few months, trying to shield me from Victoria's anger when I intervened. She'd distract her, take the focus back onto herself. Sophia's been the brave one, boss, not me. He looked at his daughter, really looked at her and saw it. The careful way she watched doorways, the tension in her small shoulders even now in relative safety. The constant alertness of a child who had learned to read danger in tiny shifts of expression and body language. She had been surviving in his own home. His daughter had been in survival mode, and he had been too blind to see it. No more, he said, the promise directed at both of them. No more tests. No more second chances for people who hurt you. No more failing to protect the people who matter. He finished bandaging Diana's arm in silence, aware of Sophia watching every movement, cataloging his gentleness with the same careful attention she gave to everything else. When he was done, he sat back on his heels. How bad is it? Diana asked, nodding toward the closed door. The political fallout, catastrophic. Victoria's family will want blood. Her father will be furious. Half the bosses will call for my head for breaking the alliance. He shrugged. I don't care. You should care. This could split the organization. Let it split. He met her eyes. And something passed between them, an understanding, or maybe a recognition. I've built empires and destroyed rivals and made men twice my age bow to me. But I couldn't keep my daughter safe in her own home. What good is any of it? Diana's expression softened. You're here now. I should have been here before. Maybe. She shifted, wincing slightly as the movement pulled at her wound. But you're here for what comes next. That's what matters. What came next was going to be ugly. He knew that. Victoria's family wouldn't accept this humiliation quietly. Her father would invoke tradition, obligation, the good of the organization. There would be attempts at reconciliation, then threats, then violence. And through it all, he would have to find a way to help his daughter heal from months of systematic psychological torture that he had been too blind to see. But as he looked at Sophia curled against Diana's side with her small hand clutching the only piece of her mother she had left, Marcus felt something shift inside him. The cold calculation that had ruled his life for 2 decades cracked, and underneath it was something else. Rage, pure and absolute, not the hot explosive kind that led to mistakes. This was ice and patience, and the absolute certainty that Victoria would pay for every moment of fear she had inflicted on his daughter. But first, there was something more important to handle. Sophia, he said softly, waiting until his daughter's eyes met his. I need to know everything. Every time she hurt you, every word she said, every moment you were scared. Can you show me? His daughter's face crumpled. And for a moment, Marcus thought she would retreat into herself the way she had so many times before. Instead, she reached for his hand, the first time she had initiated physical contact with him in over a year, and held on. Then slowly, painfully, she began to tell him, not with words, but with gestures and careful acting out of scenes and expressions that broke his heart with every single revelation. And Diana sat beside them, translating when needed. Her steady presence the only thing keeping either of them grounded as the full scope of Victoria's cruelty was finally completely revealed. The sun had set by the time Sophia finished telling her story in the only language she had. The nursery had grown dark, except for a small lamp in the corner that cast everything in warm amber shadows. Marcus's hands were steady as he watched his daughter's gestures, but inside, something was systematically destroying every cell of restraint he had spent years building. Victoria hadn't just been cruel, she had been calculated. The comments about Sophia being broken had started within weeks of moving in. Little observations, always delivered when Marcus was distracted, always framed as concern. Then came the rules. No rocking back and forth when overwhelmed. No retreating to quiet spaces when the world got too loud. No using the noise. Canceling headphones during meals because it was rude. Every coping tool Sophia's therapists had carefully built was systematically stripped away, replaced with demands for normal that a traumatized nonverbal 9-year-old couldn't possibly meet. And when Sophia inevitably couldn't meet those demands, Victoria's displeasure came in ways that left no visible marks. Meals withheld, favorite toys disappearing, and worst of all, the constant dripping poison of being told she was defective, useless, and embarrassment. How long has she been destroying your mother's things? Marcus asked, his voice carefully neutral even as his hands clenched into fists. Sophia held up 3 fingers, 3 months, half the time Victoria had lived there, and the dress today wasn't the first time she had touched it. His daughter shook her head, then made a gesture, something being slowly cut away, piece by piece. Victoria had been destroying the dress gradually. Taking small sections, Sophia wouldn't immediately notice, until today when she had decided to finish the job. She was erasing her, Diana said softly, not just the physical things. She was trying to erase Sophia's memory of having a mother at all, to make herself the only woman Sophia could remember. Marcus turned to look at her. Diana was still pale from blood loss, cradling her bandaged arm, but her eyes were sharp and focused. You knew this was happening, I suspected, but Sophia wouldn't tell me everything. She was, Diana paused, choosing her words carefully, protecting you. She didn't want you to have to choose between her and Victoria. She thought if she could just endure until the wedding, maybe Victoria would be satisfied and the cruelty would stop. The words hit him like physical blows. His 9-year-old daughter had been trying to protect him, had been weighing her own suffering against his needs, and deciding her pain was acceptable. What had he done to her? What kind of father had he become that his child thought her worth was measured in strategic value? Check the bunny, boss. Diana's words cut through his spiral. He looked at her confused. Sophia's plush rabbit, the one she sleeps with. Check it. He found the stuffed animal on the bed, half buried under pillows, worn soft from years of being held, one ear slightly torn. Marcus had never paid much attention to it beyond noting that Sophia refused to sleep without it. Now, examining it closely, he found what Diana had been telling him to look for, a small incision in the seam. Carefully stitched back closed, but still visible if you knew where to look. Open it, Diana instructed. Inside, nestled in the stuffing, was a tiny memory card and a lens so small it was barely visible. A camera. Someone had put a camera inside his daughter's most beloved possession. I sewed it in 9 weeks ago, Diana admitted. After the 3rd time, Victoria locked Sophia in the bathroom for so-called misbehaving, and I couldn't prove it had happened. I needed evidence. Something you couldn't dismiss or explain away. Marcus stared at her. This woman. This quiet, unassuming woman he had hired to keep his home clean, had been running a covert surveillance operation right under his nose. Had been protecting his daughter with the kind of strategic thinking he used in his own business. Who are you? The question came out before he could stop it. Diana's expression didn't change. Someone who recognized what was happening to Sophia because I had seen it before. In my previous work. Your previous work cleaning houses? No. She met his eyes steadily. My previous work treating traumatized children whose parents were too busy building empires to notice they were being destroyed from the inside. The admission hung in the air between them. Diana wasn't just a housekeeper, had never been just a housekeeper. She was something else entirely. Something he had failed to recognize because he had been too comfortable with the lie of her invisibility. We'll discuss this later, he said, though they both knew it was only a temporary postponement. Right now I need to see what's on that card. He pulled out his phone, retrieved the card from the bunny's stuffing, and inserted it into an adapter. The video that loaded made his blood run cold. It was weeks of footage, carefully recorded into a timeline of abuse, Victoria's voice sharp and cutting, telling Sophia she was worthless. Victoria destroying drawings Sophia had made, Victoria withholding meals, locking doors, creating a systematic pattern of psychological torture that would make even his most ruthless enemies pause. And through it all, Diana moving through the frame like a ghost, intervening when she could, documenting when she couldn't, keeping Sophia alive and relatively sane through sheer force of will. She called her mute garbage, Marcus noted. His voice flat as he watched Victoria's lips form the words, more than once. That was one of her favorites, Diana confirmed. She had others, broken thing, useless air, genetic mistake. Each word was another nail in Victoria's coffin. Marcus continued watching, his expression never changing, but Diana could see the muscles in his jaw working. Could see the way his free hand had curled into a fist so tight his knuckles had gone white. Then he did something unexpected. He opened a group message on his phone, one that included every senior boss in the Stone organization, every major player in the network, and notably Victoria's father, and he streamed the video, live, unedited. Every damning second of his partner's systematic destruction of his daughter. What are you doing? Diana asked, though she thought she already knew. Ending this. His voice was cold enough to freeze blood. No private conversations, no backroom deals, no chances for Victoria's family to spin this as a misunderstanding or a discipline issue. Everyone sees exactly what she is, now, tonight. His phone exploded with notifications. Calls, messages, voice notes piling up so fast the device couldn't process them all. He ignored every single one, letting the video play through to its conclusion. The final clip was from today. Victoria, standing over Sophia with the fabric scissors, saying clearly into the camera, "She needs to learn that clinging to ghosts is pathetic. Your father will thank me once she's properly broken, and we can send her somewhere she won't be an embarrassment anymore." The video ended. Silence, then his phone rang, not a number from the group message. His father, Marcus, answered, putting it on speaker. "Yes, are you insane?" His father's voice was tight with rage. "Do you understand what you've just done? Victoria's family will demand blood for this humiliation. You've destroyed an alliance that took years to build. She tortured my daughter. She was disciplining a difficult child. This is what happens when you let weakness fester. Sophia needs structure. She needs to be safe in her own home. Marcus's voice cut through his father's tirade like a blade. She needs to not be called garbage by the woman who is supposed to be her mother. He looked at Sophia, who was watching him with those dark, careful eyes. She needs a father who actually protects her. That child is a liability, his father said, and Diana watched Sophia flinch at the words even through the phone speaker. She can't even talk, traumatized, useless for carrying on the family name. The alliance would have given you legitimate heirs, strong ones, and you're throwing it all away for my daughter. The words were final, absolute. I'm throwing it all away for my daughter. If that makes me weak in your eyes, so be it. The silence on the other end of the line was profound. Then slowly, his father spoke again, and his voice carried a weight that made even Marcus's expression tighten. You're choosing her over the organization, over your obligations, over the family legacy. I'm choosing her over everything. Then you're a fool. The line went dead. Marcus set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. His hands were steady, but Diana could see the cost of that steadiness in the rigid set of his shoulders. In the careful control of his breathing. That's it, then, Diana said quietly. You've just declared war on your own family. No, he looked at her. And something in his expression had changed. The ice was still there, but underneath it was something molten and dangerous. I've just declared what my priorities are. They can accept it or they can try to change my mind, but they won't succeed. His phone buzzed again. This time, a message from the group chat. Victoria's father requesting an immediate meeting. Neutral ground. Representatives from both families. They want to negotiate. Diana observed. They want to save face. Marcus typed a response with swift, precise movements. Fine, but not on neutral ground. He named a location, one of his own properties, a restaurant he owned. The message was clear. This wasn't a negotiation between equals. This was Marcus dictating terms. What are you going to do? Diana asked. He looked at Sophia, who had moved closer to him during the phone call, her small hand resting on his knee like she was anchoring him to something. I'm going to make sure everyone understands that touching my daughter, hurting her, threatening her, even looking at her wrong carries consequences they can't afford to pay. They'll try to use Victoria's pregnancy claim, Diana warned. Traditional families. They'll say you have an obligation. Then it's lucky I have someone who can prove she's lying. He gestured to her bandaged arm. You found the hormone injections. You have evidence. I do. But using it means explaining how I found them. Explaining what I was doing, going through her trash, monitoring her that closely. Diana's voice was steady. It means revealing that I'm not who I said I was when you hired me. I know. Marcus stood, then carefully lifted Sophia into his arms. His daughter wrapped herself around him like she used to when she was younger, before the world had taught her that trust was dangerous. And we'll discuss that, everything about who you really are and why you're here. But right now you need to prepare for war. Diana finished. No, he adjusted his hold on Sophia, supporting her weight easily. Right now, I need to make sure my daughter knows she's safe, that she's valued, that she matters more than empires or alliances or anything else in this world. He moved toward the door, then paused. The meeting is in 2 hours. You're coming with me. I'm just the help. I don't belong in crime family negotiations. You're the witness, the one who documented everything, the one who bled protecting my daughter. His eyes met hers, and there was something in his gaze that made her breath catch. You belong wherever I say you belong. And right now I need you there. It wasn't a request, but then nothing Marcus Stone said was ever really a request. Diana stood, her injured arm throbbing with the movement. I'll need to change. I can't go to a formal meeting covered in blood. There's a guest room on the 2nd floor. Take whatever you need. He moved toward the door, Sophia still in his arms, and Diana, thank you, for keeping her alive, for being what I failed to be. Before she could respond, he was gone, leaving her alone in the destroyed nursery, with the evidence of his partner's cruelty scattered across the floor like accusations. Diana looked at the shredded silk, the blood stains, the broken toys, the torn drawings, then she looked at her reflection in the window. A woman in a ruined uniform, arm bandaged and throbbing, who had just inserted herself into a power struggle that could get her killed. She should leave, should pack her things and disappear before Victoria's family decided she was a loose end that needed eliminating. Should protect herself the way she had learned to protect herself after the last time she had gotten involved in something that wasn't her business. Instead, she headed toward the guest room to find something appropriate for a crime family meeting. Because Sophia needed her, and somehow, in 6 months of careful distance and professional boundaries, that little girl's safety had become more important than her own. The guest room was decorated in shades of gray and cream, expensive but impersonal. Diana found the closet already stocked with women's clothing. Victoria's overflow wardrobe, designer labels, perfect tailoring, everything in sizes that would swallow Diana's more compact frame. She bypassed them all, choosing instead a simple black dress that looked like it had never been worn. The fabric was quality, understated elegance rather than flashy wealth. It would do. Changing was awkward with her injured arm. And by the time she had managed to zip the dress and find shoes that fit well enough, her bandage was seeping through again. She was examining it in the bathroom mirror when someone knocked. "Come in." Marcus entered, carrying a proper first aid kit. The professional kind, not the basic household version. He had changed too. A 3-piece suit in charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, the kind of outfit that cost more than most people made in a month. He looked every inch the crime boss. Cold and untouchable, except for his eyes. Those were still carrying the weight of everything Sophia had shown him. "You're bleeding through," he observed, setting the kit on the bathroom counter. "It's fine. I can sit." Diana sat on the edge of the bathtub. Recognizing the tone, not the same voice he used with his men, that was all authority and expectation of instant obedience. This was something else, something that expected cooperation because he was asking, not commanding. Subtle difference, but it mattered. He knelt in front of her, already unwrapping the soaked bandage with careful precision. His hands were large, scarred across the knuckles, the hands of someone who had done violence personally rather than just ordering it. But they were gentle as they peeled away the old gauze, gentle as they cleaned the wound again. "You should be resting, not using this arm like nothing happened," he said, examining the cut. "Probably, but I wasn't about to leave Sophia alone long enough to go to a hospital. You could have called a doctor, and risk whoever showed up being on Victoria's payroll or your father's." Diana met his eyes steadily. "I trusted exactly one person in this building to prioritize that child's safety. And he wasn't here." The words landed like she had intended them to. Not as an attack, but as a statement of fact. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. "You're right." He applied antibiotic ointment with the same careful precision. "I wasn't here. I was too busy playing chess with my father and Victoria's family, too focused on maintaining strategic advantages." He started wrapping fresh gauze. "Too blind to see what was happening in my own home. Victoria was good at hiding it. She'd wait until you were distracted, until witnesses were scarce. She'd time her cruelty perfectly. But you saw it. I was looking." Diana watched him secure the bandage with medical tape, his movements practiced. "That's the difference. I didn't assume everything was fine just because it looked fine on the surface." He finished, sitting back on his heels, but not standing. They were at eye level now, close enough that Diana could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes, could smell the subtle scent of his cologne mixed with something sharper. Stress, maybe, or rage carefully contained. "Why?" he asked. "You're not just a maid. We both know that now. So why take this job? Why stay when you recognized what was happening? Why bleed for a child you have no connection to?" Diana was quiet for a long moment, weighing how much truth to give him. Then she decided that after everything that had happened, he deserved at least part of it. "I'm a child psychologist. Was anyway. I specialized in trauma, particularly kids who stop talking and can't regulate their emotions because of things that happened to them early in life. She looked at her bandaged arm. 3 years ago, I was treating a little boy whose symptoms were a lot like Sophia's. Couldn't talk, always on alert, difficulty controlling how he felt. His mother insisted he was just shy, that he needed more discipline. What happened? I filed a report with Child Services. Standard procedure when you suspect abuse. Except the family was connected, not crime family connected, political power, which is sometimes worse. Her voice was steady. Matter of fact, 2 days later, someone broke into my office, destroyed my patient files, and left a message that made it very clear what would happen if I pushed the issue further. And the boy died within 6 months, officially ruled an accident. The truth was that his mother's boyfriend hurt him so badly his brain swelled. He died in the hospital before they could help him. Diana's hands clenched in her lap. I couldn't save him because I didn't have proof. Because I followed proper channels and gave them time to cover their tracks. Marcus was very still, his expression unreadable. So you ran. I relocated, changed my name, buried my credentials, took a job where I could disappear. She met his eyes. And then the agency sent me to work for a single father whose daughter showed all the same signs of trauma I had seen before. I told myself I'd just do my job, keep my head down, and not get involved. But you did get involved. I couldn't not. Her voice cracked slightly. I saw Sophia flinching, saw her going silent in ways that weren't natural even for her condition, saw Victoria's carefully constructed mask and recognized it for what it was. And I knew. She took a shaky breath. I knew that if I walked away, if I let it happen again, that little boy's death would have meant nothing. Understanding flickered across Marcus's face. You're trying to save him by saving her. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just trying to live with myself. Diana gestured toward the door. Either way, here we are. You've got your truth about me. Now you get to decide what to do with it. What I'm going to do, Marcus said quietly, is make sure you're never in a position to regret staying. He stood, offering her his hand. And I'm going to make sure my daughter knows that the woman who protected her when I didn't is never dismissed as just the help again. Diana took his hand. Letting him pull her to her feet, they stood close, closer than was strictly professional, and for a moment something passed between them. Recognition, maybe, or respect, or something more complicated that neither of them was ready to name. We have 40 minutes before the meeting, Marcus said, not stepping back. Is there anything else I should know? Any other revelations that are going to surface? Just one. Diana reached into her pocket and pulled out a small prescription bottle. These are Sophia's vitamins, or they're supposed to be. Victoria's been swapping them out. He took the bottle. Examining the label, it was correct. The prescription matched what Sophia's doctor had ordered. But when he opened it and spilled several tablets into his palm, they were the wrong shape. Wrong color. What are they really? Sedatives. High dose ones that would make an adult drowsy. In a 9-year-old system, they'd be powerful enough to cause severe tiredness, confusion, and muscle weakness. Diana's voice was clinical. Detached. She was drugging Sophia to make her appear more dysfunctional than she actually is. To make your father and the other bosses see her as a problem that needed to be removed. The bottle cracked in Marcus's grip. How long? At least 2 months. Maybe longer. I only found them 3 weeks ago when I was cleaning and noticed Sophia seemed more alert on days when Victoria was out of the house. Diana watched his face carefully. I've been diluting the doses when I could, swapping some tablets out with actual vitamins. It's why Sophia's been improving slightly. But I couldn't stop it completely without Victoria noticing. She was poisoning my daughter, slowly, systematically. His voice had gone flat again. That dangerous calm that came right before violence, making her appear defective so she could justify sending her away. Or worse, Diana said what they had both been thinking. Victoria made several comments about accidents, about how tragic it would be if something happened to a sick, unstable child. She was building a story where Sophia's death would seem inevitable. Unfortunate, but not suspicious. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. the broken plastic cutting into his palm. He didn't seem to notice the blood. She was going to kill her. She was creating the conditions where she could kill her and have it ruled an accident. Yes, Diana reached out carefully, prying the broken plastic from his hand, but she didn't because she had to keep up appearances until after the wedding, and because every time she tried to escalate, I was there blocking her, disrupting her plans, making it impossible for her to get Sophia alone long enough to stage something convincing. Diana found a towel and wrapped it around his bleeding palm. She hated me for it, called me intrusive, overprotective, inappropriate, tried to get you to fire me at least 4 times. I remember. He had dismissed Victoria's complaints as personality conflicts, minor household friction, another failure to add to the growing list. She said you were too attached to Sophia, that it was unhealthy. She was right about the attachment. Diana's voice softened. That little girl got under my skin in ways I didn't expect. I told myself I was being professional, maintaining boundaries, but somewhere along the way, keeping her safe became personal. Is that a problem? Professionally, yes. Ethically, I should have stepped back, reported to proper authorities, removed myself from the situation. She looked up at him. Practically, it's probably the only reason. Sophie is still alive. They stood there in the guest bathroom, Diana holding pressure on his bleeding palm, surrounded by the evidence of Victoria's systematic attempt to destroy his daughter. Intimacy of the moment wasn't lost on either of them. This sharing of truth and guilt and determination. Thank you, Marcus said finally, for choosing practically over professionally, for letting it get personal, for being what I should have been. You're here now. That's what matters. Is it? His free hand came up, fingers brushing against her cheek so lightly she might have imagined it. Or have I already lost her? Did you see the way she reached for you instead of me? The way she trusts you more than her own father? She hasn't lost faith in you, Diana said softly. She's just learned to survive. Once she feels safe again, truly safe, not just temporarily protected, that trust will come back. But you have to earn it, boss. You have to show her that you're someone she can rely on, even when it's inconvenient or politically costly. I'm trying, I know. She released his hand, the bleeding already slowing, but trying isn't enough. You have to succeed. Because if you fail her again, Diana's voice hardened, I won't let you near her. Political power, crime connections, none of it will matter. I'll take her and disappear, and you'll never find us. It was a threat, clear and absolute, and coming from someone who theoretically had no power at all, it should have been laughable. Instead, Marcus found himself believing her, found himself seeing past the modest dress and careful deference to the spine of steel underneath. This woman would absolutely take his daughter and vanish into whatever network had helped her disappear before. And part of him, the part that recognized strategy and determination when he saw it, respected her for it enormously. Noted, he said. But it won't come to that. I won't fail her again. Good. Diana stepped back, putting professional distance between them again. Now we should go. Your daughter needs to see you handling this. And needs to know you're fighting for her. She's staying here with security I actually trust. She's coming with us. At his sharp look, Diana continued, not into the meeting itself, but nearby where she can see you're keeping her close, where she knows you haven't handed her off to staff while you deal with more important things. This meeting is going to get ugly, probably, but leaving her behind will confirm her fear that she's a burden you're trying to minimize. Keeping her close, protected but present, shows her she's your priority. Diana moved toward the door. Besides, I suspect having Sophia visible will change the tone of the negotiation. Hard to justify Victoria's actions when the victim is right there. Real and undeniable. Marcus considered this, recognizing the wisdom in it. You think like I do. I think like a woman who's learned that the most dangerous battles are fought in living rooms and boardrooms, not streets. She paused at the threshold. The difference is I choose my battles based on who needs protecting. You choose yours based on who needs destroying. But right now, we need the same thing. What's that? Victoria's complete annihilation, socially, politically, and permanently. Marcus smiled then. And it was the same smile his enemies saw right before they realized their mistake. Then let's go introduce her to consequences. Sophia was waiting in Marcus's study, curled into an oversized leather chair that made her look even smaller than she was. She had been cleaned up, changed into soft cotton pajamas decorated with stars. Her dark hair still damp from a bath, one of the household staff, Mrs. Kim, who had been with the family for a decade, sat nearby doing needlework. The moment Marcus entered, Sophia's eyes tracked to him with that careful assessing gaze she had perfected. Checking his mood, looking for signs of danger or dismissal, he knelt beside the chair, bringing himself to her level. "We need to go out for a little while, somewhere safe where you'll be protected, but I need you to come with me. Can you do that?" Sophia's eyes shifted to Diana, who had entered behind him. The question was clear. "Will she be there? I'm coming too," Diana confirmed. "I'll stay with you the whole time." Relief flickered across Sophia's small face. She nodded, sliding out of the chair and immediately reaching for Diana's uninjured hand. Mrs. Kim looked up from her needlework, her expression carefully neutral. "Boss, if I may ask, what happened to Victoria?" "Victoria is no longer part of this household," Marcus said, his voice carrying absolute finality. "That's all anyone needs to know. If there are questions, direct them to me. And if her family sends people, they won't get past the lobby." He checked his watch. 20 minutes until the meeting. "I'm restructuring security, starting with removing Daniel." Mrs. Kim's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes, understanding maybe, or quiet satisfaction. "Daniel's been with you since you were boys. Daniel accepted money to compromise this house's security." Marcus's voice was cold. "Childhood friendship doesn't excuse betrayal. I want him removed from the property tonight. If he resists, have him arrested. I don't care what excuse you use. Yes, boss. And Mrs. Kim, thank you for keeping Sophia safe tonight while I dealt with everything else." He gestured vaguely. The older woman's face softened slightly. "That child deserves better than what she's endured. We all knew something was wrong, but," she hesitated, "but Victoria was your choice." Marcus finished, and questioning her would have been questioning you. "I understand, but that changes now. If anyone on my staff sees something wrong, I want to know about it immediately. No more silence. No more protecting my feelings over Sophia's safety." Mrs. Kim nodded, and something like respect entered her expression. "I'll make sure the others understand." They left through the private elevator, the one that bypassed the main lobby and opened directly into the parking garage. Marcus's driver was waiting beside a black SUV with bulletproof glass and reinforced doors. Not the usual vehicle for a business meeting, but these weren't usual circumstances. Sophia hesitated at the car door, her small body tensing. Diana recognized the signs immediately. The vehicle was triggering something. A memory maybe of the accident that had killed her mother 3 years ago. "Would you rather walk?" Diana asked softly. "It's only 6 blocks to the restaurant." Marcus started to object. Walking meant exposure, vulnerability, but stopped when he saw his daughter's face, the relief that flooded her features at the option of not getting into the car. "We'll walk," he decided, but with protection. 2 of his men materialized from nearby vehicles, flanking them at a discreet distance as they exited the garage onto the street. The city at night was alive with sound and motion, but in this particular neighborhood, one of the quieter sections, the chaos was muted. Sophia walked between Diana and Marcus, still holding Diana's hand, but after half a block, she reached out and took her father's hand too. The gesture was tentative, testing, but when he closed his fingers carefully around hers, she didn't pull away. They walked in silence, this strange little family unit, and Diana found herself memorizing the moment. The weight of Sophia's small hand in hers, the protective presence of Marcus on the child's other side, the quiet understanding that something fundamental had shifted tonight. The restaurant Marcus had chosen was upscale, the kind of place where business was conducted over elaborate multi-course meals, but tonight the dining room had been cleared, leaving only a single large table in the center and security posted at every exit. Victoria's father had already arrived. Seated at the head of the table, with 3 of his advisors flanking him. He was older than Marcus's father, his face lined with age and authority, wearing a traditional suit designed to claim cultural high ground and demand respect. He looked up as they entered, his expression shifting from stern patience to confusion when he saw Sophia. "You brought the child?" His voice carried disapproval. "I brought my daughter," Marcus corrected. "She's the reason we're having this meeting. It seemed appropriate she'd be present." "This is family business. Children have no place. This is about my daughter being tortured by your daughter. That makes it very much her business." Marcus guided Sophia and Diana to a side room, visible through glass panels, but separate from the main dining area. "She'll wait here where I can see her, where everyone can see her, and remember exactly what we're discussing." It was a power move, Diana realized. Keeping Sophia visible made her real, undeniable, made it impossible for the men in that room to turn her into an abstract political problem, rather than a traumatized child. The side room had been set up with soft furniture, books, and art supplies. One of Mrs. Kim's assistants was already there, ready to keep Sophia occupied. But the little girl didn't move toward the toys. She stayed pressed against Diana's side, watching the adults through the glass with wary eyes. "I'll be right there," Diana promised, crouching to Sophia's level. "You'll be able to see me the whole time. And if you need me, just tap on the glass. I'll hear you." Sophia's hands moved in quick gestures. "What if they try to take me away? They won't," Marcus answered before Diana could. Having learned enough of his daughter's gestures to understand basic communication, "I won't let them. You're staying with me. That's not negotiable. Are you sure?" The question, conveyed through a single complex gesture, carried years of doubt. Years of being told she was a burden, a liability, something to be hidden away or discarded. Marcus knelt beside Diana, bringing himself to his daughter's eye level. "I'm sure. And I'm sorry you have any reason to doubt it. But Sophia," he took both her hands in his. "You are my priority, not alliances, not what other people think I should value. You, always you." Sophia's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, Diana thought the child might actually speak. Instead, she threw her arms around her father's neck. Holding on with desperate strength, Marcus gathered her close, one hand cradling the back of her head. And Diana had to look away from the raw vulnerability in his expression. This man who commanded empires and inspired fear was breaking apart in the arms of his 9-year-old daughter. And the pieces were rearranging into something different, something more human. When Sophia finally released him, Marcus stood, straightened his suit, and became the boss again. But Diana could see the cracks now, could see the father underneath the crime lord facade. "Stay with her," he said to the assistant, then to Diana. "You're with me." They entered the main dining room together, and every eye tracked to Diana, a woman in a borrowed dress, bandaged arm obvious, standing beside Marcus Stone like she belonged there. The confusion on the boss's faces would have been funny if the situation weren't so deadly serious. "This is Diana," Marcus said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "She's the witness to everything that happened. The one who documented my daughter's abuse. The one who bled protecting Sophia when my partner decided that shredding a dead woman's wedding dress was appropriate discipline." Victoria's father's expression darkened. "Your employee has no place in this negotiation. She's not my employee. She's my daughter's protector. And she has more right to be at this table than anyone who's going to defend what Victoria did." Marcus pulled out a chair for Diana, a gesture of respect that made several men shift uncomfortably. "Sit." Diana sat, acutely aware of every eye on her, of the delicate position she had just been placed in. This wasn't her world. She had spent 3 years avoiding exactly this kind of attention, this kind of exposure, but Sophia was watching through the glass, and that mattered more than her own safety. Marcus took the seat beside her, positioning himself between Diana and the rest of the table. Another message. Anyone who wanted to threaten her would have to go through him first. "Let's be clear about why we're here," Marcus began, his voice cold and precise. Your daughter spent months systematically torturing my daughter, drugging her to appear dysfunctional, destroying her only connections to her dead mother, calling her garbage, planning to either have her institutionalized or arrange an accident that would eliminate her entirely. You have proof of these accusations. One of Victoria's father's advisors asked. Hours of video evidence, medical documentation of the drug substitution, witness testimony. Marcus gestured to Diana. And physical evidence of Victoria's violence when she was interrupted. Your woman could have inflicted that injury herself to frame Victoria, the advisor suggested. Before Marcus could respond, Diana spoke up, her voice steady and professional. The wound angle and depth are consistent with a defensive injury sustained while blocking an attack aimed at someone shorter. The blood pattern on the silk fragments confirms I was between Victoria and Sophia when the scissors made contact. And the psychological assessment of Sophia's trauma responses is consistent with months of systematic abuse. Not a single incident. Silence. Then Victoria's father leaned forward, his eyes narrowed. You're not just a housekeeper. No, I'm not. I'm a child psychologist who specialized in trauma. Which means I recognized what was happening to Sophia because I've seen it before. And I documented it because I knew no one would believe the word of the help without evidence. Diana met his gaze steadily. So yes, I have extensive proof. Proof that would hold up in any court. Proof that's already been distributed to every senior boss in this network. Proof that makes it impossible to claim this was anything other than deliberate, calculated cruelty. The men shifted uncomfortably, recognizing that the narrative they had planned, to write this off as discipline, gone too far and smooth over the alliance, wasn't going to work. My daughter made mistakes, Victoria's father admitted slowly. She was perhaps too harsh in her methods, but her intentions were good. She was trying to prepare Sophia for the reality that this business has no place for weakness. She was trying to murder a 9-year-old child, Marcus said flatly. Let's not dress it up as tough love. That's an extreme interpretation. She was drugging Sophia to make her appear defective. She was destroying the child's coping tools and connections to her dead mother. She made statements on camera about hoping for accidents. Marcus's voice could cut steel. If you think there's a charitable interpretation of those actions, I'd love to hear it. Victoria's father was quiet for a long moment, and Diana could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. He was weighing options, considering angles, trying to find a way to salvage this situation. What do you want? He asked finally. The alliance is clearly finished. Our families won't be united through marriage. So what do you want from this meeting? Acknowledgement. Marcus said simply. Public acknowledgement that Victoria's actions were indefensible. That no amount of traditional values or tough love justifies what she did. And a guarantee that your family won't retaliate against me or mine for ending the engagement. You're asking me to condemn my own daughter. I'm asking you to be honest about what she is. Marcus pulled out his phone. Loading the video footage. Watch this, all of it, and then tell me if you can defend her actions. The video played on the large screen that had been set up for the meeting. Every brutal word, every casual cruelty, every moment of Victoria's systematic destruction of Sophia's spirit. The men watched in silence, and Diana saw several of them flinch at the worst parts. When it ended, Victoria's father looked like he had aged a decade. Where is she now? Locked in my guest wing until we determine what to do with her. I'm inclined to turn her over to the police. Let the legal system handle it. But I'm open to alternative solutions if you have suggestions that don't involve her ever being near my daughter again. She's my daughter. The old man's voice was rough with emotion. No matter what she's done, she's still my daughter. I can't, he stopped, gathering himself. What would satisfy you? What would end this without destroying both our families? Victoria leaves the country tonight, goes somewhere she can't hurt anyone else, and she stays gone. Marcus's terms were absolute. You can frame it however you want. Mental health treatment, family business abroad, I don't care. But she doesn't come back. She doesn't contact me or mine. She ceases to exist as far as this network is concerned. That's exile. That's mercy. Because the alternative is me making sure every family in the network knows exactly what she did. Making sure she's permanently shut out from ever marrying into power again. Making sure her reputation is so thoroughly destroyed that no one will touch her without remembering she's a child abuser. The threat was clear. Marcus was offering exile as the merciful option. The alternative was complete social annihilation. Victoria's father looked at his advisors, then at the screen still showing his daughter's frozen, cruel expression. Then back at Marcus. Give me 1 week to arrange transportation. To make explanations to the family. 48 hours, Marcus countered. And she doesn't leave my custody until she's on a plane. I'm not giving her time to run or retaliate. 48 hours. The old man agreed finally. But this ends the alliance between our families. All agreements, all cooperation. We're finished. I can live with that, they stood. And Diana expected the meeting to end there. Instead, Victoria's father's eyes tracked to the glass where Sophia sat watching. Her small face pressed against the window. That child, he said slowly, is going to be a problem for you. She can't talk, she's traumatized, a visible weakness that your enemies will use against you. Then my enemies will learn what happens when they mistake kindness for weakness. Marcus's voice was ice. My daughter is not a liability. She's the reason I do any of this. And anyone who threatens her will discover exactly how ruthless I can be when protecting what's mine. The meeting ended shortly after, formal goodbyes exchanged, promises made and recorded. When Victoria's father and his advisors finally left, Marcus stood alone in the center of the empty restaurant, the weight of what he had just done settling over him. He had broken a multi-million-dollar alliance. He had made an enemy of one of the most powerful families in the network. He had exposed family business to outsiders and prioritized his daughter over organization politics. By every measure of the world he had grown up in, he had made a catastrophic mistake. But when he looked through the glass and saw Sophia's small smile, saw her reaching for him through the barrier, saw the relief in her eyes that said she finally believed he meant what he had said, none of the costs mattered. Not when Sophia's fingers were pressed to the glass like she was trying to reach through it. Not when her eyes, always so guarded, were shining with something that looked dangerously like hope. He stepped back into the side room. Sophia was on her feet before he had fully opened the door. For a heartbeat, she hesitated. Learned fear making her freeze, waiting to see which version of him had walked in. Then his face softened. Just a fraction, just enough. Her body moved before her mind could catch up. She ran the few steps between them and collided with his legs. Arms wrapping around his thigh, cheek pressed against the wool of his suit, Marcus exhaled a breath he hadn't known he was holding. His hand came down, tentative at first, resting on her hair. When she didn't flinch, he let his fingers curl, cradling the back of her skull. "Come here," he murmured. He lifted her easily, settling her on his hip like he used to when she was smaller and the world felt less hostile. She clung to his jacket with one hand, the other fisted in his tie. Diana watched them, her shoulders finally loosening a little, some of the tension in her chest easing. She had seen too many children look at their parents with fear. This wearied testing curve toward trust was rare. "How did it go?" she asked quietly. Marcus looked over Sophia's shoulder at her. His eyes were still sharp, still calculating, but the killing edge had been blunted by something quieter. "I ended the alliance," he said. "Victoria's family will take her out of the country within 48 hours. She'll be under their control, not mine. She doesn't come near Sophia again." "And your father?" Diana asked. A muscle ticked in his jaw. "He'll have opinions. That's one way to put it," she said dryly. The corner of his mouth twitched, not a smile, not exactly, but the ghost of one. Sophia tugged at his collar, drawing his attention back. She touched her chest, then his, then Diana's. The hand signs were clumsy. But Diana recognized the pattern. They had been working on it for weeks, us together. Marcus's eyes softened. Yes, he said, us. Diana swallowed around the sudden tightness in her throat. He shifted Sophia so he could hold out his free hand to Diana. Not like a boss offering direction, like a man offering something he wasn't used to giving. Let's go home, he said. The ride back to the penthouse was quiet. Sophia sat between them in the back seat of the SUV. Small hands resting on both their legs, as if physically anchoring them to her. The city slid past in streaks of neon and shadow, Manhattan's pulse muted behind bulletproof glass. Diana watched the lights, the reflection of Marcus's profile in the window, the hard line of his jaw, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand reflexively shifted every time the car turned, subtly bracing Sophia. You know this isn't over, she said finally. I know, he replied. Your father isn't going to ignore what you did tonight. You humiliated Victoria's family. You chose your daughter over the alliance, over him. I did what he should have done. If he has a problem with that, he can say it to my face. He will, Diana said. The question is what he's willing to lose to prove he's still in control. There was a beat of silence. I'm done being controlled, Marcus said quietly. By him, by the elders, by any of them. They built this organization on the idea that feelings are weaknesses and attachments are liabilities. His hand tightened over Sophia's small fingers. They were wrong. Diana studied him, the Ice King cracking from the inside out. You're changing the rules, she said. No. His gaze stayed on the city. I'm reminding them who wrote them. Sophia leaned against Diana's shoulder. Eyelids drooping. The adrenaline crash was finally hitting. Diana shifted closer, letting the child's weight settle against her side. She's going to remember tonight, Diana murmured. Not the meeting, not the negotiations. The fact that you walked away from power for her. Kids don't always understand the details. But they understand what they're chosen over. I chose wrong for 3 years, he said. There was no self-pity in it. Just fact. Tonight doesn't erase that. No, Diana agreed, but it's a start. The penthouse felt different when they stepped inside. Nothing had physically changed. The foyer was still all clean lines and expensive art. But the energy was different. Less brittle, less hollow. Mrs. Kim met them at the door. Concern etched into the lines of her face. Is the little one okay? She asked, her eyes immediately tracking to Sophia. Sophia rubbed at her eyes, clearly exhausted, but when she saw the familiar housekeeper, she managed a small wave. She's had a long night, Diana said. But she's safe. Mrs. Kim's gaze flicked between them, Marcus holding Sophia's hand, Diana standing close enough that their shoulders almost brushed. Something in her expression softened. Her room is ready, she said, fresh sheets. I took away what was damaged. A pause. I saved every piece of the silk, boss, the dress. I didn't throw anything away. Marcus's throat worked. Thank you, Sophia tugged his hand insistently, then signed in quick jerky motions toward Diana. Diana translated. She wants to know if I'm staying. Marcus looked at Diana. Are you? It should have been a simple question. It wasn't. She thought about the life she had tried to build away from this world, the years spent learning how to help children without a gun in the room. The threats, the little boy she hadn't been able to save. Then she looked at Sophia, at the fading redness around her eyes, at the way she hovered closer to Diana than anyone else. I'll stay tonight, Diana said. She shouldn't wake up alone. Not just tonight, Sophia signed. Fast, imprecise movements, frustration creasing her small brow. Diana understood anyway. You stay, her heart twisted. She met Marcus's eyes. We'll talk, she said. After you've dealt with your father. After we know what kind of war you're walking into. Not we, he said. Me, no. Her voice hardened. We. If you think I'm staying in the background while the man who ordered your child's vulnerability tries to keep his throne, you don't understand me as well as you think. His gaze held hers. The corner of his mouth lifted, not in amusement, but in something like recognition. I'm starting to, he said. He walked Sophia to her room himself. Diana stayed in the doorway, watching as he tucked his daughter into fresh sheets. The shredded silk had been gathered into a neat bundle and placed beside her pillow. Sophia reached for it, fingers threading through the soft ruined fabric. "I'll get you something new," he said quietly. "Something that's yours, not just hers." Sophia shook her head. Pressed the silk to her chest. Diana stepped in, her voice low. "We can turn it into something else," she suggested. "Not just a reminder of what was lost. A pillow or a quilt, something that keeps your mother close without holding you hostage to the past." Sophia considered this, then nodded once. "A new story stitched out of the old one." Diana murmured. "I'll have it done," Marcus said. "Exactly how you want it." Sophia's hand moved again, small fingers sketching the familiar pattern in the air. "Thank you," his breath caught. For a moment, he looked like he might crumble right there beside the bed. "You're welcome," he said, voice rough. They left the door slightly open, soft light spilling into the hallway. Diana walked beside him back toward the study. The air between them felt different now. Not just employer and employee. Not even just allies, co-conspirators maybe, in something bigger than either of them had planned. At the study door, he hesitated. "My father will call," he said. "If he doesn't, he'll send someone. Either way, this doesn't end with tonight's meeting." "I know," Diana said. "Tomorrow," he continued, "I go to him, to the estate, to the elders, to whoever else thinks Sophia's life is a bargaining chip." His gaze was steady now. "Resolved, I won't let my daughter live in a world where the man who ordered her suffering still sits at the head of the table." Diana nodded slowly. "Then tomorrow," she said, "we stop pretending this is just about one cruel partner. We pull it up at the root." His eyes searched her face. "You're not afraid." "I'm terrified," she said honestly. "But I'm more afraid of what happens if he wins." That earned her a real reaction. A small huff of air that might have been a laugh in another life. "You should get some sleep," he said. "Use the guest room. I'll have someone bring you clothes. I've slept in worse places," she said. "But I won't say no to an actual bed." She turned to go, then paused. "Marcus." He looked up at the sound of his name without the title. "What your father calls weakness," she said softly, "is exactly what's going to make you more dangerous than he's ever been. Men like him don't know how to fight someone who has something worth losing and refuses to lose it." He held her gaze for a long moment. "Good," he said, "because tomorrow he learns that." Diana nodded, then slipped down the hallway toward the guest room, the soft padding of her footsteps swallowed by the penthouse's quiet. Marcus stood alone in the doorway of his study for a moment longer. Then he stepped inside, closed the door, and picked up his phone. The call history stared back at him. His father's number near the top. The man who had told him since he could walk that emotion was a liability and family was currency. He didn't call, not yet. Instead, he opened his encrypted files, pulled up accounts, shipment logs, offshore structures, names, numbers, evidence. If his father wanted to play the role of architect of silence, erasing inconvenient women and fragile children for the sake of the bloodline, then tomorrow he would see what happened. When the quiet son he had underestimated his whole life stopped being quiet. When the Ice King brought the cold to his own house. And for the first time in 3 years, every move Marcus planned, every angle he calculated, every piece he shifted on the board wasn't for power. It was for a 9-year-old girl sleeping down the hall with shredded silk under her cheek, and for the woman who had bled to keep her alive. Tomorrow he would go to his father. Tonight he let himself stand in the middle of his own empire and feel fully the simple, terrifying truth. He was done obeying men who would kill his family in the name of saving it. The family estate sat 40 minutes north of the city, sprawling across grounds that spoke of old money and older violence. Marcus had grown up there, learning to fight in the marble halls, to negotiate in the library, to do things he was not proud of in the basement, where screams were swallowed by stone and earth. He had sworn he would never bring Sophia there. Now he was walking through the front doors with Victoria in handcuffs and Diana at his side, breaking every rule his father had spent decades enforcing, The foyer was exactly as he remembered. Cold, austere, designed to make visitors feel small, his father sat in the main receiving room, surrounded by 9 senior bosses whose combined age probably exceeded 3 centuries. They looked up as Marcus entered, dragging Victoria behind him like a war prize. "You dare bring that woman here in chains?" His father's voice could freeze water. "Have you lost your mind along with your judgment?" "No," Marcus said flatly. "I found both, along with evidence that you've been orchestrating my daughter's destruction for months." He threw a folder onto the table between them. Financial records, messages between his father and the head of security, instructions to handle the girl problem quietly. The room went silent. "You disabled my security," Marcus continued, his voice eerily calm. "You paid my own men to look the other way, while your chosen partner tortured a 9-year-old child. You sanctioned this. I did what was necessary," his father said, not denying it. "That child is damaged goods. She can't talk. She's traumatized, useless for carrying on the bloodline. The Alliance would have given you strong sons. Legitimate heirs who could actually lead. She's my daughter. She's a liability that needed removing." The words landed like physical blows. Diana felt her hands curl into fists, felt rage bubbling up her spine. This man, this patriarch who claimed to value family above all else, had just admitted to orchestrating the systematic abuse of his own granddaughter. "You knew," Marcus said quietly. "You knew what Victoria was doing and you let it happen. You paid people to let it happen. I encouraged it," his father said, standing, his traditional clothing rustling with the movement. "A girl who can't speak has no place in this family. She brings shame, weakness. This organization needs strength, Marcus." "I thought 3 years would have taught you that." Something flickered across Marcus's face. "What did you say?" "Your attachment to your first wife was already a problem. At least her death freed you to make better choices." The old man's tone was dismissive, like he was discussing a failed business venture rather than a woman's life. Diana watched Marcus's expression shift. The ice wasn't cracking, it was burning. "The car accident," Marcus said slowly. 3 years ago. The brake failure that killed Sophia's mother. That was supposed to kill Sophia too, wasn't it? His father's silence was answer enough. "You tried to murder them both." Marcus's voice had gone flat, empty. "My wife and daughter. Your own blood. I tried to solve a problem before it became catastrophic," his father corrected. "The girl survived, unfortunately, but at least the weak mother was removed. I gave you 3 years to accept reality and move on. Instead, you've let that damaged child make you soft." Marcus moved so fast 3 bosses reached for weapons, but he wasn't attacking his father, not yet. He was advancing on Victoria, who had been standing silent and smug throughout the exchange. "You knew," he said to her, "about the accident, about my father's involvement." Victoria's perfect composure finally cracked. "I knew you needed better, deserved better. That woman was too soft. She was making you weak, just like that. She didn't get to finish." Because Victoria, desperate and drowning, made the fatal mistake of thinking honesty would save her. "I finished what your father started," she shrieked. "The brake line wasn't enough. Your stupid wife saw the mechanic working on it and tried to get out of the car. So I helped. I grabbed the wheel, made sure she went over the side instead of just stopping. The room froze. I did you a favor," Victoria continued, her voice rising with something close to madness. "Just like I've been doing with Sophia. Getting rid of the weak ones so you could finally become what you were meant to be. And I would have succeeded if this," she gestured venomously at Diana, "this outsider hadn't interfered." The details spilled out like poison. How Victoria had been obsessed with Marcus for years. How she had volunteered to help his father's plan by making sure the accident was fatal. How she had spent 3 years positioning herself as the perfect replacement, waiting for the alliance to be arranged. "She was weak," Victoria kept going. "Your daughter is weak. But I could give you strong sons, perfect heirs. I was doing what needed to be done." Marcus's gun was out before anyone could blink. pressed against Victoria's forehead. "Wait." His father's voice cracked like a whip. "You can't give me one reason, because killing her means killing your heir. She's carrying your child, Marcus. She told me 3 days ago, confirmed by the family doctor. She's lying." The test was positive. The doctor verified it. "In our world, that child, your child, is protected by blood oath. You know the law. Kill the mother of your heir, and the elders have the right to execute you in return." His father's voice carried absolute certainty. "Lower the weapon. We'll figure out how to contain this, but you cannot kill her." The other bosses shifted, hands moving toward concealed weapons. The message was clear. Shoot Victoria and they would shoot Marcus. He had built his empire on calculated risks. He knew when he was trapped. His finger tensed on the trigger. Anyway, then Diana stepped forward from where she had been standing silent in the doorway's shadow. "She's not pregnant," Diana said quietly. The family doctor only saw the lab numbers. Elevated hormone levels, no context. He never ran a full panel. She fed him exactly what she wanted him to see. Every head turned toward her. "You don't get to speak here." His father snarled. "You nothing, hired help who's forgotten her place. I'm a woman who's very good at reading medical waste," Diana replied, her voice steady despite 9 guns now tracking toward her. She pulled a crumpled receipt from her pocket, smoothing it against her thigh. "This is from a fertility clinic in the city. Prescription-grade hormone injections. Enough to trigger positive pregnancy tests." For weeks, she tossed the paper onto the table, followed by 3 empty injection vials she had carefully preserved. "I found these in Victoria's bathroom 3 days ago when I was cleaning. She'd been injecting synthetic pregnancy hormone to fake the test results." Diana's gaze was clinical, detached. "The nausea she's been performing, timing her morning sickness for when you'd notice. It's an act, a calculated performance to create exactly this scenario where she'd be protected from consequences." Victoria's face drained of color. She's lying. She planted those. "I'm carrying his heir." "Then take a blood test," Diana said simply. "Real pregnancy shows different hormone ratios than injection. Induced false positives. Any legitimate lab can distinguish between them in under an hour." Silence. His father picked up the vials, examining them with the care of a man who had spent decades navigating deception. His expression darkened. "These are real," he said slowly. "Pharmaceutical grade. Dated from 2 weeks ago. She's desperate." One of the bosses observed, faking pregnancy to invoke blood protection. He trailed off, the implications settling over the room like ash, because faking pregnancy to avoid execution wasn't just deception in their world. It was one of the worst forms of betrayal, manipulating the very laws that held the organization together. The protection over Victoria evaporated like morning mist. Marcus's gun never moved from her forehead, but his eyes shifted to Diana. Questions flickered there. How long had she known? Why had she kept this evidence instead of presenting it immediately? What else was she hiding? But those were conversations for later. Right now, there was only the woman who had murdered his wife and tried to destroy his daughter. Finally stripped of every defense. "Wait." Victoria's composure shattered completely. "Please, I did it for us, for the family. Your father wanted—" "My father," Marcus interrupted, his voice colder than Diana had ever heard, "is going to watch what happens when you betray me, when you touch my daughter, when you murder my wife." His finger tightened on the trigger. Then the windows exploded inward in a shower of glass and gunfire. The world became noise and chaos. Diana moved on instinct, dropping low as bullets tore through antique furniture and priceless artwork. She grabbed the nearest boss, an ancient man who had been frozen in shock, and hauled him behind the overturned table. "Stay down," she shouted over the gunfire. The old man stared at her like she had grown a second head. But he stayed down. Through the haze of smoke and splintered wood, Diana caught glimpses of the attack. At least a dozen men moving with military precision, pouring through shattered windows and doorways. Not rivals trying to take advantage of chaos. This was coordinated, professional. Someone had known exactly when and where to strike. Marcus had shoved his father behind cover with one hand while returning fire with the other. His movements fluid and practiced. But they were surrounded, outgunned, and whoever had planned this had done it well. Code black. His father's voice cut through the chaos. triggering something Diana hadn't known about until she understood it. When she had called Marcus from the penthouse, frantic and terrified, she had used the emergency line. What she hadn't known was that calling that number automatically triggered the organization's nuclear option. A silent network, quite alert that the Stone family was in code black. His father's shout now was the second half of that protocol, ordering every man on the estate into full war footing. She had accidentally started a war, and now everyone with an agenda against the Stones was descending on the estate, trying to take advantage of what they thought was a vulnerability. "This is your fault." Victoria screamed at Diana from where she had collapsed behind an overturned piano. "You stupid." A bullet punched through the wood 6 inches from Victoria's head, cutting off whatever venom she had been about to spew. Diana's mind raced, cataloging angles and threats with the kind of tactical thinking that had nothing to do with being a maid or a psychologist. She counted attackers, noted their formation, recognized the pattern of their assault. Professionals. High-end ones. Someone had hired serious killers to finish what Victoria and his father had started. The question was who. Movement caught her eye. A gunman flanking around the room's edge, using smoke and chaos as cover. His weapon trained on Marcus's unprotected back. Nobody else saw him. Marcus was focused forward, defending his position. The bosses were pinned down. The gunman's finger tightened on the trigger. Diana moved. She didn't think. Didn't hesitate, just grabbed the pistol from the fallen boss lying 3 feet away. The man had caught a stray bullet in the first seconds of the assault. She raised it in one smooth motion. The weight felt familiar in her hands, wrong and right at the same time. She had sworn she would never touch a gun again. She fired twice. The gunman dropped. Marcus spun toward the sound, his expression shifting from combat focus to shock when he saw Diana standing there, weapon still raised. Stance perfect, not the stance of someone who had taken a basic self-defense class. The stance of someone who had been trained by professionals, who had grown up around violence, who knew exactly how to stop a threat efficiently and without hesitation. "Who the hell are you?" One of the bosses shouted at her. Diana didn't answer. She was already moving, using the momentary lull in gunfire to assess their situation. 3 exits, all compromised. Approximately 15 threats still active. Probably more waiting outside, limited ammunition among the defenders. They were going to lose this fight if they stayed there. "The wine cellar," she said sharply to Marcus. "It's reinforced, designed as a safe room during old times. There's a tunnel that leads to the garage. How do you know that?" his father demanded. "Because my father helped build it 40 years ago when he worked as your enforcer." The words came out flat. "Matter of fact, James Curtis, you probably remember him. He was very good at making problems disappear, until he tried to disappear himself and you had him killed for it." The revelation hung in the air for half a second before another volley of gunfire forced everyone back down. Marcus's eyes met Diana's across the chaos. Understanding flickered there. She wasn't just a maid who had gotten lucky with a job placement. She was the daughter of one of his father's former soldiers. She had grown up in this life, knew its secrets, and had been hiding in plain sight for 6 months. Later, he said, "The word of promise, we're talking about this later. If we survive," Diana agreed. They moved as a unit, Marcus, Diana, his father, and 3 surviving bosses. Victoria stumbled after them, still cuffed, screaming about being left behind, until one of the bosses grabbed her arm and hauled her along. The cellar door was concealed behind a false panel in the library. Diana triggered it from muscle memory, her hands finding the mechanism without conscious thought. The passage opened onto stairs descending into darkness. "Go," Marcus barked, providing covering fire as the others descended. Diana went last. Pulling the door closed behind her just as bullets punched through the wood where her head had been seconds before. The tunnel was exactly as she remembered from childhood, narrow, damp, lit by emergency bulbs that cast everything in sickly yellow. Her father had brought her down here once, shown her the escape route, made her memorize it. In this life, he had said, You always need a way out. She hadn't understood then, hadn't wanted to understand. Now, running through the darkness with gunfire echoing above them, she understood perfectly. They emerged in the garage, which was mercifully clear of threats. Marcus's men had secured it, forming a defensive line. But the relief was short-lived, because standing in the center of the garage, blocking their path to the vehicles, was someone Diana recognized. Her uncle, her father's brother, the man who had inherited James Curtis's position after his death. And he was pointing a gun directly at Marcus's father. "Hello, little niece," Uncle Raymond said, his voice carrying false warmth. "I wondered if you'd recognize the old escape route. Your father would be proud, Raymond." Diana's voice was steady despite her racing heart. "You're behind this." "Behind what?" "Finishing what should have been done years ago." He gestured with the gun toward Marcus's father. "This man ordered your father killed, erased him like he never existed. And you've been working in his son's house, cleaning his toilets, pretending to be nothing. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? I thought you were dead," Diana admitted. "The report said you died in Singapore 3 years ago. Reports lie. I've been very much alive, waiting, planning." His eyes shifted to Marcus. "Your father destroyed my family. Now, I'm going to destroy his." He pulled the trigger. But he wasn't aiming at Marcus's father. He was aiming at Marcus. Diana moved without thinking, her body responding to instinct and training she had tried to bury. She slammed into Marcus, knocking him sideways as the bullet carved through the space where his chest had been. They hit the concrete hard, Diana's injured arms screaming in protest. But they were alive, her uncle smiled. "Still protecting the wrong people, I see. You hired mercenaries to attack your own people," Diana said. Struggling to her feet, "You triggered the emergency protocol knowing it would bring chaos. You're not avenging my father. You're using his death as an excuse for a power grab. Smart girl." "But not smart enough." Raymond's gun tracked toward her now. "You should have stayed gone, little niece. Should have kept running instead of playing house with the enemy. She's not the enemy." Marcus said quietly, moving to stand beside Diana despite her attempt to keep him back. "And neither am I. Your father is a monster who ordered the death of his own granddaughter, who sanctioned torture and murder in the name of tradition." Marcus's voice carried absolute conviction. "But I'm not him, and I won't pay for his sins." Noble words from a man neck-deep in blood. "Not noble," Marcus said. "Practical." He gestured around the garage. "You think killing us ends this. You think the network will accept a takeover built on hired guns and broken rules. You'll be dead within a week." Raymond hesitated, calculation flickering in his eyes. That's when Victoria, who had been silent and terrified in the corner, made her move. She lunged for the nearest gun, dropped by one of the fallen guards, and came up firing wildly. Not at Raymond. Not at the remaining threats still potentially hunting them. At Diana. "You ruined everything." Victoria shrieked. Her aim terrible, but her intent clear. "Everything. I would have been perfect. I would have given him everything he needed." Bullets punched into concrete and walls, and everything except Diana, who had already moved. But one shot went wide. Hit a fuel container. The explosion wasn't massive, but it was enough. Enough to throw everyone to the ground. Enough to trigger the automatic fire suppression systems. Enough to turn the garage into chaos. When the smoke cleared, Raymond was gone. Slipped away in the confusion, along with whatever hired guns he had brought. Victoria lay unconscious against a support pillar, a head wound bleeding freely, and standing over her, weapon drawn, breathing hard, was Sophia. The little girl should not have been there. She was supposed to be safe in the penthouse, guarded by Mrs. Kim and the household staff Marcus trusted. She was supposed to be as far from this violence as possible. Instead, Sophia stood in the smoking ruins of the garage, a small pistol clutched in both hands, her pajamas splattered with someone else's blood. "Sophia." Marcus started forward. His voice cracked with horror and relief, and a dozen other emotions. His daughter's eyes met his, wide. Terrified, but not surprised. She had known where to find them, had somehow followed them here, had witnessed everything. And she was holding the gun that had likely saved their lives. One final wild shot from Victoria had been heading directly for Diana's head before something had deflected it, before someone small and determined had thrown themselves into the situation. Diana knelt slowly, bringing herself to Sophia's eye level. Her movements careful and non-threatening. "Sweet girl," she said softly, "can you put the gun down for me?" Sophia's hands were shaking so badly the weapon wavered. But she lowered it, let Diana gently take it from her small fingers. Then she collapsed, not unconscious. Worse, a full-blown panic attack, her small body seizing with hyperventilation, hands clawing at her throat like she couldn't breathe. Diana gathered her close immediately, applying the pressure techniques that had worked before, grounding the child through touch and quiet words. "You're safe. I've got you. Breathe with me. In 2, 3, 4. Out 2, 3, 4. Marcus dropped beside them, one hand on his daughter's back, the other braced against the concrete like he might collapse himself. "How is she here?" he asked, the words barely audible over the dying echoes of gunfire. "I don't know," Diana answered honestly, keeping her focus on Sophia's breathing. "Mrs. Kim would never." She followed the tracker. The voice came from the garage entrance. Mrs. Kim herself stood there, disheveled and bleeding from a cut on her forehead, but alive. "I told her no, locked her in her room. But the child is more resourceful than we thought. She has a phone, one of the old ones you gave her for emergencies. She tracked your location and called a car service. A 9-year-old called a car." One of the surviving bosses sounded incredulous. "A 9-year-old who's been watching adults use technology her entire life?" "Mrs. Kim corrected. "She can't speak, boss. But she's not stupid. She knew you were in danger. She came to help." Marcus looked at his daughter, really looked at her, and saw not the broken, helpless child everyone kept insisting she was, but someone fierce, someone determined, someone who had traveled across the city into an active war zone because the people she loved were in danger. "Sophia," he whispered. She pulled back from Diana slightly, her breathing still ragged but more controlled. Her hands moved in quick, desperate gestures. "You were going to die. I heard the phone call, heard Diana say they were attacking. I couldn't let you die. Oh, baby." Marcus pulled her fully into his arms, no longer caring who saw, no longer maintaining any kind of distance. "You could have been killed. You could have. I don't care." Her hands were fierce, emphatic. "You're my dad. I don't care." The words, signed but not spoken, were no less powerful. They broke something in him, the last wall, the final defense. He held his daughter and let himself break. Just for a moment, just enough to start healing, then sirens cut through the moment, multiple sirens. Police, fire, probably federal agents given the scale of the violence. Someone had called it in, probably neighbors. Possibly Raymond himself, setting up one final trap. Marcus's father, who had been silent throughout the garage confrontation, finally spoke. "We need to leave now before law enforcement arrives and makes this complicated." "It's already complicated," Diana pointed out, standing with Sophia cradled against her hip. "You can't just walk away from a war zone without questions. Watch me." The old man's voice carried absolute authority. "This is what we do. This is what we've always done. We disappear the evidence, we control the narrative, we know." Marcus's voice cut through his father's. "We don't, and not this time." His father's face darkened. "You don't get to make that choice." "Yes, I do. Because I'm done protecting people who hurt my daughter. I'm done covering up crimes in the name of family." Marcus stood, still holding Sophia, and faced his father fully. "You tried to kill her mother, sanctioned months of abuse and torture, and you want me to help you escape consequences. You're my son. I'm her father first." The words were final, absolute, and that means you're done. The bosses can decide what to do with you, but I won't protect you, not anymore. The old man's expression cycled through shock, rage, and finally something that might have been respect. "You're choosing her over the organization, over everything we built." "I'm choosing her over everything," Marcus confirmed. "Including you." His father nodded slowly. Then you're no son of mine. Good. The words came out quiet and absolute. Because you were never the father I needed. The words hung in the air as police cars pulled up outside, as federal agents began securing the perimeter, as the world Marcus had grown up and started its final collapse. He didn't care. He had his daughter in his arms. He had Diana at his side. Everything else could burn. The interrogation rooms at the FBI field office were designed to be uncomfortable. Cold metal chairs, harsh fluorescent lighting, cameras in every corner recording everything. Marcus sat in one with his lawyer, a man so expensive and connected he had made 3 federal agents nervous just by showing up. Diana sat in another, alone, because apparently child psychologists turned household staff turned reluctant participants didn't warrant legal representation unless they asked for it. She hadn't asked. Sophia was in a third room. The room was generous. It was actually a family observation space with toys and soft furniture designed for interviewing child witnesses. Mrs. Kim sat with her, and through the one-way glass, Diana could see the little girl clutching her reconstructed silk, watching the door like she expected monsters to burst through at any moment. The questioning had been going on for 4 hours. 4 hours of carefully dancing around the truth, of explaining just enough to avoid obstruction charges, while revealing nothing that would destroy what was left of the Stone family's legitimate businesses, of watching federal agents try to crack the organization's outer shell and bounce off like insects hitting bulletproof glass. They wanted someone to blame for the attack. They wanted to connect the Stone family to organized crime. They wanted Marcus to flip on his associates, to trade information for immunity, to burn everything his father had built in exchange for his freedom. What they didn't understand was that Marcus was already burning it, just more strategically. My client, the expensive lawyer said for the 16th time, was the victim of an unprovoked attack on his family estate. He defended himself and others present using legally owned firearms. He's cooperating fully with your investigation into the mercenary assault. But these questions about organization operations are outside the scope of tonight's events. The lead agent, a woman named Torres, with sharp eyes and sharper instincts, leaned forward. Your family estate had enough weapons to supply a small army. We found evidence of at least 3 separate criminal organizations involved in tonight's attack. And you want me to believe Mr. Stone is just an innocent businessman? I want you to believe that my client is the victim here. His home was attacked. His family was threatened. His 9-year-old daughter, the lawyer's voice hardened, witnessed violence that will require years of therapy. If you're planning to charge him with anything, do it now. Otherwise, we're leaving. Torres looked like she wanted to argue. But they both knew the truth. Without concrete evidence tying Marcus to specific crimes, all they had was speculation and circumstantial connections. And his lawyer was too good to let those gain traction. Fine, Torres said finally, but we'll be watching, Mr. Stone. Whatever game you're playing with the old guard, with rival families, with your father's legacy, we'll be watching. Then you'll see a man trying to protect his daughter, Marcus said quietly. Nothing more complicated than that. He stood, adjusted his blood-stained suit, and walked out. In the observation room, Diana was getting similar pressure. Your uncle orchestrated tonight's attack, a different agent said, his tone almost sympathetic. Raymond Curtis, former enforcer for the Stone organization. Supposedly killed 3 years ago in Singapore, except he wasn't dead. He was planning this, and you expect us to believe you had no idea. I hadn't seen my uncle since I was 12. Diana said truthfully, I thought he was dead. My entire family thought he was dead. If I had known he was alive, she hesitated, choosing her words carefully. I would have stayed much further away from anything connected to the Stones. But you didn't stay away. You took a job as their housekeeper. I took a job as a housekeeper, period. I didn't know the family's background when I accepted the position. I just needed work. The lies came easily, smoothly, practiced. If I had known I was walking into organized crime, I would have run. Would you? The agent's eyes were knowing. Because the footage we've reviewed from the estate's remaining security cameras shows you moving like someone with combat training, shooting like someone who's done it before, protecting Marcus Stone like you had a personal stake in keeping him alive. Diana met his gaze steadily. I protected a man who was being shot at. That's called being a decent human being. And yes, my father taught me to shoot when I was young. Before he died. Before I tried to build a life that had nothing to do with violence. Until tonight, she agreed. When violence found me anyway. So if you're planning to charge me with anything, please do it now. Otherwise, I'd like to go check on the traumatized child I've been caring for. The agent studied her for a long moment, then he slid a business card across the table. If you remember anything, if Raymond Curtis contacts you, if you decide you want to talk about what really happened in that house, he tapped the card. Call me. Diana pocketed it without comment and walked out. They met in the waiting area. Marcus, Diana, Mrs. Kim, and Sophia. The little girl launched herself at both of them simultaneously, wrapping one arm around Diana's waist and the other around her father's leg. Let's go home, Marcus said quietly, but home wasn't the penthouse anymore. Home was a temporary safe house 30 miles outside the city, arranged through the lawyer's contacts, where they could regroup and figure out what came next. The drive was silent except for Sophia's quiet breathing as she dozed between them. Finally feeling safe enough to sleep, your father, Diana asked eventually, in federal custody for now. They'll charge him with something, conspiracy, weapons violations, maybe more if they can connect him to historical crimes. He'll probably cut a deal. Marcus's voice was empty. I don't care. He's not my concern anymore. And Victoria, critical condition. Even if she survives, she's facing attempted murder charges, multiple counts. His hand tightened on the steering wheel. Also not my concern. Raymond disappeared. But he won't stay hidden long. Men like him, men with grudges, they can't help themselves. They have to come back. Have to finish what they started. Marcus glanced at her. He'll come for you eventually. You know that. I know, Diana said quietly. But at least now, I see him coming. They pulled up to the safe house, a sprawling property hidden behind gates and trees, isolated enough that approaching vehicles would be visible from half a mile away. Mrs. Kim took Sophia inside to get her cleaned up and properly put to bed. That left Marcus and Diana standing in the driveway, the weight of everything that had happened settling over them. You lied to the FBI, Marcus observed. You noticed. I notice everything about you. His eyes were intense in the darkness. You knew exactly what you were doing tonight. The combat training, the tactical awareness, the way you moved through that tunnel like you had mapped it years ago. That's not something you pick up from a father who taught you to shoot when you were young. No, Diana admitted. It's not. So who are you really? She was quiet for a long moment, weighing how much truth to give him. Then she decided that after bleeding together, fighting together, nearly dying together, he had earned it. My father was James Curtis, she said. Your father's enforcer for 15 years. He was very good at his job, too good. Eventually, he saw things he wasn't supposed to see, learned things he wasn't supposed to know, and when he tried to use that information to get out, to take me somewhere safe, your father had him killed. How old were you? 12. Old enough to understand what happened, old enough to be terrified. My mother died when I was born, so it was just us. After he died, my uncle took me in, trained me, said I needed to know how to survive in this world, but you ran anyway. I ran when I was 18, changed my name, buried every connection to the Curtis family, got degrees, built a legitimate career, convinced myself I could be someone else. Diana's laugh was bitter. Then I saw Sophia's case file, saw her symptoms, saw the Stone name, and I couldn't walk away. Why? Marcus moved closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him in the cold night air. Why come back to the family that destroyed yours? Because Sophia isn't you, isn't your father, isn't responsible for any of it. Diana met his eyes. She's just a little girl who needed someone to see her, really see her, and I couldn't let her go under because of her last name. You saved her. We saved her. Diana corrected. You made the choices that mattered. You walked away from power, from your father, from everything you had built. That took more courage than anything I did. I'm not courageous. I'm just. He stopped, searching for words, tired of being cold. Diana suggested softly, yes. The admission seemed to cost him, tired of being the Ice King, tired of calculating every move, tired of living like feelings are weaknesses and love is a liability. And now, he reached out, his scarred hand cupping her face with surprising gentleness. I want to be warm. Want to feel something other than rage and calculation. Want to. She kissed him before he could finish the sentence. It wasn't gentle, wasn't soft. It was desperate and real and tasted like everything they had survived together. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, and she went willingly, pressing against him, like she could crawl inside his skin when they broke apart, both breathing hard. Diana rested her forehead against his. This is a terrible idea, she whispered. Probably the worst one I've ever had, he agreed. Your world is violent, dangerous. Everything I ran from, I know, and I'm the daughter of a man your father murdered. There are probably 10 different rules against this. I don't care about the rules anymore. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. I care about you, about Sophia, about building something that doesn't require us to be monsters. Can you do that? Really, walk away from all of it? I can try. His voice was raw, honest with you. If you'll stay. Diana thought about running, about disappearing again, about building another life somewhere far from men with guns and blood-soaked empires. Then she thought about Sophia's small hand in hers, about the way Marcus's careful coldness had thawed into something human, about the fact that she had spent 3 years hiding from her own history and had still ended up here, still ended up fighting for something that mattered. I'll stay, she said finally, but on one condition. Name it. No more secrets. No more calculations. If we do this, if we try to build something real, we do it honestly. Even when it's hard, even when the truth is ugly. Marcus nodded slowly. Deal. Starting with this truth. I'm falling for you. Have been since you bled for my daughter, maybe before. And that terrifies me more than anything else that's happened tonight. Diana's breath caught. That's surprisingly honest, she said. No more secrets, he replied. His smile was small, uncertain. Entirely unlike the cold boss who had walked into that nursery what felt like years ago. I'm trying. She kissed him again, softer this time, a promise rather than desperation. Then keep trying. We'll figure out the rest as we go. They stood there in the darkness, holding each other, two people who had survived violence and loss and systematic cruelty, deciding to be something other than survivors. Inside the safe house, a small voice interrupted their moment, not signed, not gestured, spoken, Dad. Sophia's voice was tiny, rusty from years of disuse, but unmistakably real. Diana. They broke apart, both frozen in shock. Marcus moved first, running toward the door. Diana followed, her heart pounding. Sophia stood in the hallway, Mrs. Kim beside her with tears streaming down her face. The little girl looked terrified of her own voice maybe, or of the change it represented. She tried again, the word clumsy and uncertain. I was scared you left. Marcus dropped to his knees in front of her, his composure finally completely gone. We're not leaving. Never again. I promise. Sophia's small hands came up, touching his face like she was checking he was real. You came back, you fought for me. You chose me, always, he said fiercely. Always you, over everything, over everyone. She threw her arms around his neck, and Marcus held his daughter and let himself cry. Real tears, not the controlled emotion of a crime boss, but the raw grief and relief of a father who had almost lost everything that mattered. Diana watched them, her own vision blurring. 3 months, that's how long it had been since that night. 3 months since the FBI had grudgingly closed their investigation for lack of evidence. 3 months since Marcus's father had pleaded guilty to conspiracy and been sentenced to 20 years. 3 months since Victoria had been deported to face charges of her own. 3 months since Raymond had vanished into whatever hole he had crawled out of, leaving nothing but threats and promises of return. 3 months of therapy for Sophia, of rebuilding trust, of learning to be a family instead of survivors sharing space. Penthouse had been sold. Too many ghosts, too many bad memories. They had bought a house instead. Smaller, warmer, filled with light and soft surfaces and all the things Sophia needed to feel safe. Marcus had stepped back from active leadership, maintaining just enough connections to keep them protected, while walking away from everything that reminded him of his father's empire. He was rebuilding not a criminal organization, but legitimate businesses that didn't require bloodshed to maintain. It was slower, harder, less profitable in the short term, but he slept better, smiled more, spent his evenings reading to his daughter instead of planning territorial expansions. Diana had gone back to school, not to practice. She had lost her license years ago when she disappeared. But to teach, to help other people recognize and respond to child abuse before it escalated, to make sure what had happened to Sophia didn't happen to others, and in the quiet moments, in the spaces between rebuilding and healing, they built something else, something neither of them had a name for yet, something that looked like love but felt more complicated, more earned. Now, standing in their new kitchen, while Sophia practiced writing at the table, her speech was improving daily, but writing came easier. Diana watched Marcus attempt to cook breakfast and thought about how far they had come. "You're burning the eggs," she observed. "I'm creating them." He corrected without looking up, with extra char for flavor. "That's called burning. You're very critical for someone who ate 3 of my burned pancakes yesterday." I was being polite. "You licked the plate." Sophia giggled, an actual sound, bright and real, and signed something too quick for Diana to catch. "She says you both ridiculous," Marcus translated, his understanding of his daughter's sign language getting better as Sophia used it more, "and that she wants the burned eggs because they taste like love." Diana's throat tightened. She did not say that last part, she implied it. He said solemnly, then softer, "But she's right. Everything I make tastes like love now, even when it's objectively terrible." "That's the worst line I've ever heard. And yet you're smiling." She was. She really was. The doorbell rang, interrupting the moment. All 3 of them tensed, old instincts dying hard. But it was just the mail, dropped off early by a carrier who knew better than to linger at the house with the very alert security system. Marcus sorted through it while Sophia returned to her writing, and Diana salvaged what she could of breakfast. Then he went still. "What?" Diana asked, recognizing the tension in his shoulders. He held up a single envelope. No return address, foreign postage, expensive paper. Inside was a photograph of Sophia, recent, taken from across the street from her new school, and a note that Marcus translated in a voice like winter. "The Curtis family remembers. We'll be seeing you soon. Raymond, still out there, still watching, still waiting." The moment should have been terrifying, should have sent them back into panic mode, should have shattered the peace they had been carefully building. Instead, Marcus set the photo down, looked at Diana and Sophia, his family, chosen and protected and loved, and smiled. Not the cold, calculated smile of the boss, just fierce, determined, ready. "Let him come," Marcus said quietly. "We survived worse. We'll survive him too." Diana moved to his side, her hand finding his. "Together," she said. "Together," he agreed. Sophia looked up from her writing, saw their joined hands, and smiled her small, careful smile. Then she went back to work, carefully forming letters that spelled out the words she had been practicing all morning. "My family," and in that moment, surrounded by burned eggs and morning light and the promise of threats they would face together, they were whole, imperfect, complicated, built from broken pieces and difficult histories, but whole. And Raymond, Curtis, and anyone else who thought they could destroy what they had built was about to learn exactly what happened when you threatened a family that had already survived hell. They had survived cold, and they were never going back.